Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCorry. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin our broadcast with Chinese President Xi Jinping's offer of $60 billion in financing for Africa on Monday and his write-off of some debt for poorer African nations. China has been criticized by some for engaging African nations in debt trap diplomacy, a charge it vehemently denies. While speaking at the opening of a major summit with African leaders, Xi promised development that people on the continent could see and touch, and with no strings attached. Viewers Mariama Diallo reports.
Addressing African leaders in Beijing, Chinese President Xi Jinping said the new package would include $15 billion in aid, along with interest-free and concessional loans and special funds for China-Africa development. And he pushed back on accusations that China was engaging in debt trap diplomacy.
Government debt from China's interest-free loans due by the end of 2018 will be written off for indebted poor African countries, as well as for developing nations in the continent's interior and small island nations.
He says his country is determined to not impose its will, nor interfere in Africa's internal affairs or attach any political strings when offering support to the continent.
China will also expand its imports from Africa, especially for non-resources products, and will facilitate African financial institutions' bond issuance in China.
The package is in addition to an earlier pledge of $60 billion the Chinese president announced at a previous Sino-Africa summit in 2015. Speaking at the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says the focus is on making tangible improvements to the quality of life for Africans.
In the values that it promotes, in the manner that it operates, and in the impact that it has on African countries, FOCAC refutes the view that a new colonialism is taking hold in Africa, as our detractors would have us believe.
China has loaned about $140 billion to African countries between 2000 and 2017, according to data from Washington's Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
Well, for more insight on the second day of the China-Africa Summit, viewers Bill I joins me live via Skype from Beijing. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening.
Now, bring us up to speed on day two of the summit activities today. There were some briefings.
That's right. There was a second day of meetings. You know, we had two things going on here at the same time. There was a meeting of entrepreneurs, and then also the 30-some heads of state, representatives from more than 50 countries really all together here, meeting and discussing the plans for the next 3 years for the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. We were hoping to get a little bit more detail at the end of the day when there was a press conference held, but really Xi Jinping and South Africa's president, as well as Senegal's president, participated in a brief briefing, but all of them just read their statements. What we were really got from this 2 days of meetings, you've already kind of outlined very clearly. You know, the key thing is that now China has upped the ante even more. They've added another $60 billion that it's willing to contribute to Africa. This time around, we're seeing that some of the loans that it's extending, there's not as many interest-free loans, and they're trying to tailor it a little bit more so that it makes a what they're calling a more substantial kind of commitment and a contribution to the economies in Africa.
Now, it looks like there are just a few people who tend to see that there could be a trap here, which is being termed as a debt trap. But does any African leader seem to be concerned about this, or everybody's just happy with everything that is being offered and the conditions around it?
Well, certainly all the leaders that came here were very happy about this opportunity. Business representatives and entrepreneurs that we spoke with, of course, were very eager to see what kind of opportunities might come from this. You know, China has pledged that there are no political strings attached to these loans, but really we're going to have to see going forward how this all plays out. You know, one of the key things that has already been mentioned is that wiping off the debt for some of these countries whose interest-free loans come to term at the end of this year. And what we'll need to watch closely is what actually happens. Is there some kind of a give and take with those loans being wiped clean? Does China ask for something in return? We don't know how that's all going to play out.
And while some of these massive infrastructural developments are transforming African countries, some are fearing that African nations are not really owning either. They have no say in how they're being implemented, or perhaps they're just not being kind of involved in how these things are being done. Is there any concern over there?
Well, you know, that's a very interesting thing that you mentioned. Xi Jinping had made one remark where he said that really only Chinese and Africans have a say in whether or not this cooperation is it good or not. And we know that in China there is no discussion about this. The 60 billion that was offered in 2015 and the 60 billion that was now offered up this year. There was no legislative process that brought this forward. This was a decision that the Communist Party leadership made on its own. There has been quite a bit of commentary on China's social media about this. Obviously, these posts that come up that are critical of the government's decision are censored heavily and very quickly. But some have noted that, you know, if we had $60 billion to spend on education in China, that could fund the budget for the already cash-strapped ministry for 3 years. Others have said have suggested that maybe we should donate Xi Jinping to Africa and give them his leadership.
Interesting observation.
As this moves forward, we're really going to have to see how both the people in Africa in the different nations there respond and hear how it plays out as well.
Exactly. So we'll wait for day 3 tomorrow. Thanks a lot, Bill, for joining us today. That's viewers Bill Ide reporting via Skype from Beijing in China.